What is hidden goodness and visible goodness? Narrator: when one does something good and people know about it, it is called visible goodness. When one does something good and no one knows about it, it is called hidden virtue. Liao Fan: those with hidden virtues will naturally be known by the heavens and will be rewarded. Those who practice visible goodness are known by people, and they enjoy fame. Narrator: fame itself is a fortune, but fame is not favored by heaven and earth, for heaven and earth do not like those who seek fame. Liao Fan: we can see that those who have great fame but lack the virtues supporting it will eventually encounter some kind of unthinkable adversity. A person who truly has not done any wrong but continues to be falsely accused by others will have descendants who will suddenly become prosperous and successful. Narrator: from this, we can see how important it is to know the minute differences between hidden and visible goodness. We cannot afford to mistake them. Liao Fan: in performing good deeds, there is also what seems to be goodness but is actually not, and what does not appear to be goodness but actually is. For example, in the spring-autumn period, there was a country named Liao. Because there were other countries which took their citizens as slaves or servants, the country of Liao made a law which rewarded those who paid the ransom to regain the freedom of their fellow citizens. At that time, Confucius had a very rich student named Dzi Gong. Although Dzi Gong paid for the ransom to free his people, he did not accept the reward for doing such a deed. Narrator: he did it out of good intention, seeking only to help others, and not for the reward money. Liao Fan: but when Confucius heard this, he was very unhappy and scolded him, saying, "Confucius, you acted wrongly in this matter. When saints and sages undertake anything, they strive to improve the social demeanor, teaching the common folk to be good and decent people. One should not do something just because one feels like it. In the country of Liao, the poor outnumber the wealthy. By refusing the reward, you lead others to think that accepting the reward money is being greedy. Thus, all the poor people and others who do not wish to appear greedy will hesitate to pay for ransom in the future. Only very rich people will have a chance to practice this deed. If this happens, no one will pay the ransom to free our people again." Liao Fan: another student of Confucius, Dzi once saw a man drowning in the river, and went forth to rescue him. Later, the man thanked him by giving him a cow as a token of gratitude. Dzi accepted his gift. Confucius was happy when he heard this, and said, "Confucius, in the future, people will be willing and eager to help those who are drowning in deep waters or lakes." Liao Fan: if we look from the view of common people, Dzi Gong, who did not accept the reward money, was good, and Dzi who accepted the cow, was not as good. Who would have known that Confucius praised Dzi instead and scolded Dzi Gong? From this we can see that those who practice kind deeds must not only look at the present outcome, narrator, but should also consider the act's effect in the long run. Liao Fan: one should not only consider one's own gain and loss, narrator, but should look to see the impact made on the public. Liao Fan: what we do right now may be good, narrator, but with passing years it may inflict harm upon others. Liao Fan: therefore, what seems like goodness may in fact be the opposite, and what appears to be the opposite of goodness may someday turn out to be goodness done after all. There are other examples of what appears to be goodness but actually is not. For example, narrator, there are many things that people ought to do, but sometimes these things prove to be better left undone. Forgiveness is a virtue, but it cannot be used without reason and wisdom. If we easily forgive and release a criminal when he has not repented and reformed, we may be letting loose a threat to society, causing more harm than good. In this case, forgiveness would be improper, and the man would be best left in his cell. Liao Fan. Everyone ought to have manners, but they should be carried out with good measure. Overdoing your courtesy to others can result in making them proud and arrogant. In this case, it would not be a good thing. Narrator. Keeping to one's word is a virtue, but if one causes bigger trouble through keeping a small promise, then that would be considered improper also. Liao Fan. Being loving and compassionate is a wonderful trait, but if compassion is carried out by allowing anything to be done, then the spoiled person would be daring and unrestrained, causing greater harm and trouble in the future. This would be most unmerciful. Narrator. These are all examples of what appears to be goodness but actually is not, and should be thoroughly contemplated. Liao Fan. What is improper goodness and proper goodness? In the Ming dynasty, there once was a prime minister named Liễu, who was a just and lawful man. When he grew old, he retired to his hometown, where he was loved and respected by all the people. Once, a drunken villager went to his home and proceeded to insult him. Mr. Liu was not angered by his words but instead told his servant, "Mr. Liu, this man is drunk. Let's not give him a hard time." Liao Fan. With this, he closed the door and ignored the onslaught of insults. A year later, the same man committed a grave crime and was sent to jail with the death sentence. Upon hearing this, Mr. Liu said with great remorse, "Mr. Liu, if I had taken him to the authorities for punishment that day when he came to insult me, perhaps this would not have happened. A little discipline then could have prevented the great harm done now, and might have saved him from certain death. At that time, I was only thinking of being kind, and unknowingly nurtured a daring and outrageous character." Since nothing came from his deed of insulting a prime minister, he grew bold and went on committing the crimes which later brought him the death penalty. Liao Fan. This is an example of doing something bad while having good intentions. There is also an example of those who did good when they in fact intended otherwise. Once, a famine ravished the land, and people stole food from others. In broad daylight, a rich family reported their stolen losses from the marketplace to the authorities, but the government did not want to get involved and did nothing to stop the people. Eventually, the people grew more daring and chaos was imminent. So, the rich family took the law into their own hands and proceeded to catch and punish those who stole from them. In this way, peace returned to the land and the people stole no more from one another. It was with selfish intentions that the rich family acted, but the result of their deeds actually did everyone a great benefit. Narrator. Therefore, we all know that goodness is proper, and evil is improper. But remember that there are cases where deeds done out of good intention resulted in evil, and deeds done with evil intentions resulted in good. This is saying that although the intention was proper, it resulted in the improper, and can only be said as the improper within the proper. However, there is also the case when the improper was intended but resulted in the proper. This is called the proper within the improper. Liao Fan. Everyone ought to know and understand this. What is half goodness and full goodness? In the I Ching, Book of Change it is said, Narrator. When a person does not accumulate kind deeds, he or she will not attain good fortune. When one does not accumulate evil deeds, he or she will not bring about great adversity. Liao Fan. The accumulation of kind and evil deeds greatly determines our future. If we are diligent in doing kind deeds, it is like collecting things in a container, and with diligence, it will soon be full, and we will have our reward of good fortune. If we are eager in the accumulation of evil deeds, and gather that with great diligence, then the container of evil will soon be full and disasters will surely befall. If we are somewhat lazy in our collecting, either in kindness or evil, then the container will be left half filled, and neither good fortune nor adversity will come swiftly. This is one explanation of half goodness and full goodness. Once there was a poor lady who went to visit a Buddhist temple, and wished to make a donation. However, she was so poor that she had only 2 cents. So she gave these to a monk. To her surprise, the temple's abbot himself came forth to help her repent for past offenses and dedicate her merits in front of the Buddha. Later on, the same lady was chosen to enter the imperial palace and became a concubine to the emperor. Clad in her riches, the lady once again went to the temple to donate, this time bringing thousands of silver pieces to give. To her dismay, the abbot only sent his disciple to help her dedicate her merits. The lady did not understand, and so questioned the abbot. "Lady, in the past, I only gave 2 cents in donation, and the abbot personally helped me repent. Today I come with great wealth to give, and the abbot will not help me perform my dedication. Why is it so?" Liao Fan. The abbot answered her saying, "Abbot, though the money you gave in the past was scant, it came from a true and sincere heart. And it was necessary for me to repay your sincerity by personally performing your dedications. Today, although your donation is manifolds more, the heart of giving is not quite as true and sincere as before. Therefore, it is fitting and enough that my disciple perform your dedications for you." Liao Fan. This is the example of how thousands of silver pieces are only considered as half goodness, and 2 cents as full. Another example is of Li Yung, an immortal of the Han dynasty. He was teaching his student, Dongbing Liu, the art of transforming steel into gold. They would use this gold to help the poor. Dongbing asked his teacher, "Dongbing, will the gold ever change back to steel again?" Liao Fan. Li Yung answered him saying, "Li Yung, after 500 years, it will return to its original form." Liao Fan. Dongbing then said, "Mr. Liu, in this case, I don't want to learn this art, it will harm those who possess the gold 500 years from now." Liao Fan. In actuality, Li Yung was only testing the goodness of his student's heart, and happy with the results, he said, "Li Yung, to become an immortal, one must complete 3,000 virtuous deeds. What you have just said came from a truly kind heart. Your 3,000 deeds are fulfilled." Liao Fan. This was another example of half goodness and whole goodness. When we perform a kind deed, it is best if we can do it out of our innermost sincerity, not seeking rewards or noting in our minds how much we have done. If we practice thus, then all our good deeds will reach fulfillment and success. If, instead, we always think of the deeds we have performed, looking for a reward of some kind, then no matter how diligently we practice in an entire lifetime, the deeds will still be considered as half goodness. Narrator. For example, when we donate money to the poor, we can practice what is called pure donation. In this type of giving, we do not linger on the thought of I, who is giving, or dwell on the importance of the object I am giving away, or think of who the receiver is. We are simply giving, and it is out of true sincerity and respect. When we give with pure donation, then 1 dough of rice can bring boundless fortune. And the merit from giving 1 cent can wipe away the sins from 1,000 kalpas. Liao Fan. If we always keep in mind the good we have done, and expect rewards for our actions, then even a donation of 200,000 gold pieces would still not bear us the reward of a fully good fortune. This is another way of explaining half goodness and full goodness. What is big goodness and small goodness? Once there was a high-ranking official named Zhengda Wei, who was led into the spirit world to be judged for his good and bad deeds. The judge there ordered for his records of good and evil to be brought out. When the records arrived, Zheng Da was astounded at the courtyard full of his bad records, and at the single scroll which contained his good deeds. The official then ordered for the two to be weighed on the scale. Surprisingly, the bad records which had filled the courtyard were lighter than the single scroll of good deeds, which was only as thin as a chopstick. Zheng Da asked the judge, "Zheng Da, I'm barely 40 years old, how could I have committed so many wrongdoings?" "Liao Fan," the judge answered him, saying, "Judge, when you give rise to a single thought that is improper, it is considered a bad offense there and then, it does not have to be carried out through action to be counted as a wrong. For example, when you see a pretty lady and give rise to improper thoughts, that is considered an offense." Liao Fan. Zheng Da then asked him what was recorded in the single scroll of good deeds which outweighed the evil deeds. The judge replied, "Judge, once the emperor planned to build a great stone bridge, and you proposed against the project due to the hardship and toil it would cause the tens and thousands of people needed for the work. This is a copy of your proposal to the emperor." Liao Fan. Zheng Da said, "Zheng Da, I did make the proposal, but the emperor dismissed it and began the project. Anyway, my proposal had no effect on the matter at all. How can it bear so much weight against my numerous offenses?" Liao Fan. The judge replied, "Judge, although the emperor did not take your suggestion, that one thought of kindness you bore for the tens and thousands of people was very great. If the emperor had listened to you, then the good performed would be even greater." Liao Fan. Therefore, when one is determined to do good for the benefit of all people, then a small deed can reap great merits. Narrator. If one thinks only about benefiting oneself, then even if many deeds of kindness are performed, the merit would still be small. Liao Fan. What is difficult goodness and easy goodness? The knowledgeable scholars of the past used to say, "Scholar, when one wishes to conquer one's greed and desires, one should start with the most difficult to overcome." Liao Fan. Fan Chr, a student of Confucius, once asked his teacher how to cultivate one's humanity to its fullest. Confucius replied, "Confucius, start with what's most difficult to practice." Liao Fan. What Confucius meant by the most difficult, was to sever the selfish mind, and one should practice that by conquering what is most difficult for oneself to conquer. We should practice like the old teacher, Mr. Su of Qiangxi, who gave 2 years' worth of salary to a poor family who owed money to the government. Thus he saved them from being torn apart should the husband be taken to prison. Narrator. Another example is Mr. Zhang from Hebei. Mr. Zhang saw an extremely poor man who had to mortgage his wife and child, and had no money for their redemption. If he was unable to pay for their return, the mother and child could both lose their lives. Liao Fan. Therefore, Mr. Zhang gave his 10 years of savings to the poor man so the family could be reunited. Narrator. Such examples as Mr. Su and Mr. Zhang are rare, for they have given what is most difficult to give, and what others could not sacrifice, they did so willingly. Liao Fan. Another example is Mr. Jin from Jiangsu province. He was old and without any sons, so his neighbor offered their young daughter in marriage to him, to give him descendants to carry on his lineage. But Mr. Jin could not bear to ruin the otherwise bright and long future of this young girl, and so refused the offer and sent her back home. Narrator. This is another example of being able to overcome what is most difficult to conquer in oneself. Therefore, the heavens showered down fortune, which was especially good for these 3 old men. Liao Fan. It is easier to accumulate merit and virtue for those who have money and power than for those who are poor. But if one refuses to cultivate kindness, even when it's easy and when one has the chance to do so, then it would truly be a shame. For those who are poor and without prestige, doing kind things for others is a great difficulty. But if in this difficulty one can still manage to help others, then it is a great virtue, and the merits gained would be boundless. In being a moral person and dealing with affairs, we should help others whenever the opportunity presents itself. You should know that helping others is not such an easy task, and that there are many ways to do it. In short, the ways of helping others can be simplified into 10 important categories. The first is supporting the practice of kindness. Narrator. When we see people trying to do a little kindness, we should assist them in their deeds and help their kindness grow. When we see others who wish to do good but cannot accomplish it on their own, we should lend a hand and help them succeed. This is the way we can cultivate, supporting the practice of kindness. Liao Fan. The second category is harboring love and respect. Narrator. We should harbor respect towards those who are more knowledgeable, older, or of higher status than we are. For those who are younger, less fortunate, or of lower status, we should harbor a mind of loving care. Liao Fan. The third category is helping others succeed. Narrator. When we see a person who is considering whether or not to do a good deed, we should persuade him to put all his effort into doing it. When others meet with difficulties in practicing kindness, we should help think of ways to overcome the difficulty and guide them to success. We must not be jealous at the accomplishments of others, nor try to sabotage their good acts. Liao Fan. The fourth category is persuading others to practice kindness.